Hi everyone, Sal here from Khan Academy. Welcome to our Daily Homeroom live stream. For those of you who don't know what this is or what Khan Academy is, Khan Academy is a not-for-profit with a mission of providing a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And over the last many years, we've been building resources from early learning all the way through elementary, middle, high school, early college, math, science, English language arts. And we always imagined that it would be used in conjunction with normal physical classrooms, or it could be used by students outside of classrooms, maybe students in parts of the world who might not have access to materials or certain types of courses. So we could have never foreseen the situation that the world is now in. But as soon as we saw the school closures happen many weeks ago now, it seems like a lifetime ago, I know, for many of us, we realized that it's our duty as a not-for-profit with this mission to step up. And so you can see here the resources that we've been putting together to essentially keep everyone learning. And so we've been doing things like this live stream, which is just a way for us to stay connected and answer any questions you might have. But also, we've been doing parent webinars, teacher webinars. We've been putting together daily schedules for how you could structure your day or your children's day or your student's day if you're a teacher. We just put out learning plans so that folks can understand how they can pace themselves over the course of the next 6 weeks to 20 weeks. We ideally think most people should leverage the summer so that you don't have that learning loss and you're able to go to next school year with as much learning under your belt as possible, as prepared as possible. So that's the goal of this. We bring on guests every now and then. I do want to give a special shout out. We are not for profit. We are funded through philanthropic donations. We were already running at a deficit before this, and our deficit has increased because now our load on our servers, et cetera, are up over 2.5 times what we normally see. I want to give a special thanks to Bank of America, AT&T, Fastly, Google.org, and Novartis, who are companies that have stepped up just in the last few weeks in order to really make support our response to what's going on with the school closures. And of course, our longtime donors who help Khan Academy exist, but we do need more support. Whether it's an individual donor who's able to give $5, $10, all the way up to a corporation, everything helps and allows us to support more folks, especially folks who might not otherwise be able to afford or have access to resources like that. So today we're going to just do another Ask Me Anything. We have some exciting guests. Tomorrow we have a vice president from the College Board to answer. I know there's a lot of questions around the SAT and implications for when the testing dates are and implications for college admissions. So we're going to have a very robust conversation about that tomorrow. But for today, it'll be more of me and Dan, my colleague, is going to help support. Just any questions y'all have. And I know there was a ton of questions from yesterday. We can answer some of those, but happy to take any questions y'all have. So let's see, I have this one question I'm seeing is, so from YouTube, Nikhil Govender says, "Hi Sal, I'm currently working on a project that requires you to build an app. Could you please give me any suggestions or ideas on building an app?" Well, this is interesting. And actually, if anyone else has suggestions or ideas for Nikhil's app, feel free. And Nikhil, whoever suggestion you take, you owe them a cut. And if you leverage ours, donate to Khan Academy. So app ideas. It's funny. I'm always intrigued. People before on previous live streams have said, "Sal, if you weren't working on Khan Academy, what other things would you want to work on?" And I'm fascinated by anything that can help people have a richer lives or maybe explore that whole side of happiness. And I had thought about, and as far as I'm aware, no one's building it, maybe someone is, app that helps build relationships. It could be relationships with friends, it could be relationships with coworkers, it could be relationships with a partner, where you're able to essentially rate how you feel about that relationship. And then you can benchmark your relationship relative to other relationships because you would have the data on how other people are feeling about the relationship. So I think that could be an interesting app if you're in a corporation or at a school to measure kind of team health or sentiment. You could imagine in kind of a marriage setting, things that go on in marriages. People normally, try to keep it behind closed doors, but they don't know, are we in the bottom quartile of marriages or are we in the top quartile of marriages? Do we argue an average amount so I think there's something interesting there. It could be with parents and children. Is this level of angst that we're experiencing normal or is it isn't? But if every parent was rating it, maybe there's something interesting there. So that's one idea. It's kind of a fun idea, but I actually think it could have legs behind it. I think there could be interesting apps around just just understanding yourself better. You've seen kind of these personality type apps, but I think things that could, there is research and mental health research and things about activities or things that you can do that will improve your well-being. I think there could be interesting apps for folks to help each other, either with some type of volunteer work or help tutor each other. So those are the types of spaces that I'd be interested in if I were making an app. So let's see, from YouTube, Kate Grafe says, as a pre-service teacher, I was wondering how to implement collaborative learning through remote learning, and what does classroom management look like in this scenario? It's a great question, Kate, and the world is figuring it out, and I won't claim to be the expert here. I've actually worked with a couple of teachers in a couple of school districts trying to figure it out myself. I've tried to run a few sessions myself. The only tips I could give you based on my limited experience here with running real live virtual sessions are the more interaction you can get, the better. I think, as you can imagine, that's always a best practice, even if you're in person. But especially if you're on a Google Meet or Skype or a Zoom session, it's that much more important to pull out responses from the people who are there. Because if you don't do that, it's essentially equivalent to a video, and then you might as well be a video. So I would say try to pick out as much responses as possible, depending on what platform you are using. There are techniques, you can mute everyone so you don't get all of their home noise and all of that, and then you can call on people, say, well, what do you think? I know Zoom has gallery view, which is a really nice way of saying, especially if you can fit everyone on one screen, you can say, okay, does anyone have a question? How do you feel about this? You can say, how many of you support the proposition? How many of you are against it? And I think that type of interaction really keeps the conversation going. One thing that I do this on a weekend with friends where we try to talk about just, how do we become better people? When I finish the sessions, and I'm usually the moderator, I go through all of the tiles on Zoom and I make sure that I get a response from everyone. And I'm just like, hey, everyone, 30 seconds, 1 minute, what's your takeaway from today? How are you going to try to be different or observe things differently over the course of the next week? So those are practices that I've seen work reasonably well in a Zoom or Google Meet type scenario.
Sal, you've mentioned yesterday about kind of approaches for kids who are either afraid of math or are scared about tackling that subject. We have a related question. You talked about the process, but we have a question on from YouTube from Shockblast YT. Hi Sal, what's your opinion on growth mindset?
Yeah, a good question, Shockblast. And for those of you who don't know, growth mindset is this idea that many times folks will have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is you think you either have the ability or you don't. Let's say in math, you say, I'm a math person, I'm gifted in math, or I'm not gifted in math. I'm not. That's a fixed mindset either way, whether you have a positive fixed mindset or a negative fixed mindset. A growth mindset doesn't say I'm either good or bad at something. A growth mindset would say, well, I don't know how my capabilities, the only way I'm able to push the envelope is if I am willing to try things, I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone, and I'm willing to fail every now and then. And when I fail, I don't just try to run away from that. I reflect on why I failed and how I could do it better next time, and then I can keep going. And as you can imagine, research has shown is that folks with growth mindsets, there's a strong correlation between growth mindsets and people who are successful in a field. And you might think that, okay, I could get how the underconfident fixed mindset people, they're kind of, psyching themselves out. Oh, I'm not good at this subject. I'll never be, so they don't even try. But even the confident, or even let's call it the overconfident fixed mindsets also don't do well. So if you say, if in your head you're like, I am genetically a great math person, what happens with a lot of those folks is when they're faced with a challenge, they don't want a data point that might undermine their self-perception. So they actually might not tackle the hard problem because it's like, well, what if I get the hard problem wrong? Or what if my friends see that I can't do it? Then that's going to undermine my self-perception. But then if you're not willing to try that more difficult thing, you're never going to grow. And in the end, you're not going to do as well as a person who said, well, I'm just always going to try things and I'm going to try to tackle it. And if I fail, I'm going to see how it goes. And not only is there a strong correlation between growth mindset and success in life, and I got to say, everyone that I know in life who's done well in a domain has a growth mindset about that domain. But there's exercises or things you can realize to build your growth mindset. When you realize that your brain is like a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. When you get questions wrong and reflect on it, that's actually some of the best ways to form neural connections. That actually helps you build a growth mindset. And so the way it's related to all the work at Khan Academy, a lot of what we talk about at Khan Academy is the notion of having as many shots as goal as necessary. When you go practice exercises on Khan Academy, it's not like you just do 5 exercises and you got a 80% and we move you on to the next thing. You can take that quiz, that unit test, that course challenge, that mastery challenge as many times as you want. And our team has painstakingly put many items there, so you're unlikely to get repeat questions. So you can get as much practice and go from a 60%, 70%, 80% to 100%. And our view is that the notion of mastery learning and growth mindset are hand in hand. A fixed mindset world is, I got a C on a test, I guess I'm just a C student, I'll move on with my life. While a growth mindset will say, I got a C on a test, let me try again. And that's essentially mastery learning. Let me try to turn that into an 85%, a 90%, a 95%. So it's something we hold very dear to Khan Academy, and I also think it's a very important mindset. And I have to be frank, we all have growth mindsets, hopefully in certain domains in our life, and in other domains in our life, for better or for worse, we've probably developed fixed mindsets. And it's good to be reflective on where we do have those fixed mindsets and how we can deprogram ourselves a little bit. So let's see. There's a question from Elliot H. Elliot, where it feels like we're getting to know each other. You've asked good questions. You always refer to me as Dumbledore Sal, which I find very flattering. You emphasize breaks and not overloading. Yet you did just the opposite as a student and a young man. Is this do as I say, not as I do? How much must one work to be an innovator like you? All right, that's good. I like questions that point out potential hypocrisy on my part, or at least perceived hypocrisy. So you're right on certain level. I mean, if I were to, at least the narrative I have of my own youth is that when I was in elementary school, middle school, I was a decent student. I essentially did, for the most part, what I was asked to do. And then, even my freshman year in high school, I was a decent student, but I wasn't the student who was really, I guess you could say, gunning in some way. But then in my sophomore year, I started to kind of wake up to the realities of the world. I said, well, if I want to be a little bit more ambitious, I have to apply myself more. It can't just be me kind of calling it in and just doing what's necessary. So I did become a little bit more serious. And anyone who knows me back then knows that I actually wasn't that serious of a kind of a person. I like to believe I'm kind of, I have a playfulness about things, but I got serious about my life. I says, my mom was a single mother, raised me and my sister. She worked as a cashier at my uncle's food store at that time, so she wasn't making a lot of money. She was making around $16,000, $17,000 a year. I was on free and reduced lunch, so I had a little bit of a fire in my belly to say, hey, I want to live like some of my friends whose parents were professionals, and they had health insurance, they had houses, and so that was a little bit of a fire in the belly. And I do, so through the end of high school and early college, I did always try to push myself. And I will admit, sometimes I kept adding, and at points it got like, maybe I pushed a little bit too hard. And I'm guilty of that today too, even with the work at Khan Academy. If anything, it's not that, now at Khan Academy, I'm like, oh, it looks like it's all perfect. I'll just take a break. There's something about the further you go, there's a little process in your brain that says, oh, Sal, you can't relax now. Look at how much there is to do. And so you keep layering more and more, but then you also start to appreciate if you layer on a little bit too much, that stress, that anxiety, the relationships that you have, they can slowly break down. And if you're not super observant about how much you are redlining, they can fully break. The engine can stop. And so one of the things that I've learned, and in some ways you often learn it through experience, but hopefully you don't have to learn it fully through experience, is it's fine to, and everyone has a different red line point. Challenge yourself. That's a growth mindset. Keep challenging yourself. Don't beat up on yourself if you fail, and keep challenging yourself. But if at some point you feel like, wow, this is starting to affect my well-being, it's starting to affect my relationships, I can't handle this level of intensity for too long, that's a good sign for you to take your foot off the pedal. And in some circles, it can kind of be viewed as a sign of weakness that, oh, they're not so intense, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, anyone who I've known who's done well, yes, they might push themselves. They have a growth mindset. They're stepping out of their comfort zone. They're willing to try things and fail, but they have a very good sense that this is a marathon. The people who do well aren't the people who just, pull five all-nighters in a row and then burn out. They're the people who are able to keep keep whatever they're trying to achieve going for long periods of time. And that's something I remind myself, and that's what I would remind to all of y'all. Figure out what your capacity is, what you can do. Don't, and actually always leave a little bit of that margin of safety, that extra flex space to recharge, and then and then you'll be well equipped for the marathon so to speak. I have to say, even in college, I was very, I probably called myself lazy at the time, but I did make a point of making sure that I had time with friends, that I was getting the full college experience, that I wasn't, only just trying to optimize a grade or something like that. And I'm so glad I did it, because frankly, the things that I remember from college are much more of the connections I made, the conversations I had with friends. My wife I met in college, so that was a great outcome. And I don't remember, a lot of the classes I took, or whether I got a A or A minus or a B in a class. So there's definitely, you need to make space for all of those aspects of life. But good question, and it's always good to call people on whether they're not being consistent in their advice with how they live. So from YouTube, Susana Garcia Dominguez. Susana, I feel like I'm getting to know you as well. You're asking a lot of good questions. In light of these health initiatives, do you think elementary schools are getting too big? For example, schools that are 400 plus students. Simple answer, I don't know. I'm not a expert on, based on your question, it sounds like you might be asking like the epidemiology of it. And if you put more than 400 kids in a room, are they going to be spreading diseases and whatnot? I don't know. I don't know. My intuition there is it's less about the number. It's more about how the school is structured. But I would say, generally speaking, it is nice the more attention, especially young kids, can get supports from parents and students and teachers especially. So I could imagine if classes get too large, that can be not ideal for kids' development or feeling supported and things like that. So from YouTube, Miss Melissa Gutro asks, what is the best way to assess students during this time of remote learning? I'm well aware that students cheat. So it depends what you're trying to do the assessment for. We've actually had conversations at Khan Academy, and I've had conversations with other groups that are trying to assess student learning. So Khan Academy is actually a very good way if you want to just understand where either you as a student, where you are, or if you have a child, or if you're a teacher and you have students. Have them work on the course challenge on Khan Academy, do the unit tests on Khan Academy, or just say, hey, get as far as you can in your grade level of course, or whatever they need to work on Khan Academy. And that level of mastery, that percent completion that they are, that's a really good assessment of where they are in their learning path. We've done multiple studies that show very strong correlations between progress on Khan Academy, mastery on Khan Academy, and other third-party benchmark assessments. So if you just want to get a read of where someone is, I think you have the tools. If you're thinking about how do I give someone a grade, or how do I give them a score that might impact college admissions, or give them a credential of some kind, then the stakes do get higher. And to your point, there's some subset of folks who might be tempted to cheat in that scenario. I think there's ways to minimize that cheating. Obviously, cheating can happen in any scenario. When you go to there's classes I remember in college where you go to the gym and there's 300 people taking a test. They never checked our IDs. So if someone wanted to cheat, they could. But as you often hear, they're really just cheating themselves. But I think in this online world, I'm a big believer actually in kind of honor codes. You tell people like, look, sign this document, vow that you will not cheat. We have you on video saying that. And if you cheat, and if it's discovered you're cheating, it's proved you're cheating, the penalties are very high. So I think that's one way to do it. Another way is, I think you could do some light proctoring even in the socially distanced world, where you say, okay, everyone, if you want to get credit for this thing, maybe you use Khan Academy, come on to Zoom or Google Meet on this day, and I will proctor y'all, and I will kind of observe you as you're taking this. Now, it's not going to be completely foolproof. There might, a student might have a sibling off camera whispering into their ear or something. But there's no such thing as foolproof. You really just want to get, a 99% solution. And I think, you don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. I believe most students want to do what's right. They don't want to cheat. And especially even the ones that might be a little bit more ethically ambiguous about it, or ambivalent about it. If you have some penalties if they're discovered cheating. We had David Coleman on about the AP test, and I think they're taking that route. They are taking a lot of security measures, but at the end of the day, if a student is discovered cheating, plagiarizing, whatever, there's severe repercussions for them in life. And hopefully some of what happened with the Varsity Blues scandal, with these college admission scandals, it's shown people the downsides of even attempting to cheat. Are pretty large. Ideally, your ethics, your consciousness, your conscientiousness keeps you from cheating. But if you're afraid of outcomes, then keep in mind they can be bad. So
Sal, we have
let's
a
see.
big picture
Okay.
question
Yeah.
for you, Sal. From
Okay.
YouTube, Prashika Jane asks, "Hi, Sal. What factors of EdTech needs to change to help in situations like these, especially to help kids who have no access to school?"
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the big one, the obvious one is access, as your question implies. That's not something that we at Khan Academy have been directly be able to do. We obviously can't source laptops and give people free internet access. It's not what we do. We are dependent on that somehow existing. What we've been seeing because of the COVID crisis in schools, especially in places like the US, schools have actually done a really good job over the last 10 years, and there have been government programs like E-rate, which have made internet access and devices much more common in public schools. What this crisis highlights is the inequity at home is now a major issue. It's always been an issue, but this really makes it stark. And it's not just inequity to access something like Khan Academy. It's also inequity in terms of, in this time of social distancing, just to stay sane, you want to be able to connect with friends and family over a hangout, over a Zoom session. And if you don't have internet access, it's going to be very, very difficult to just feel connected to others right now. We're seeing some really good programs out there. One of our guests that we're going to have later this week is Ray and Barbara Dalio. They have sponsored 60,000 laptops for low-income high school students in Connecticut. And they're working with the telecom providers to get them free internet. We had Dr. Jesus Jara on from Clark County, which is greater Las Vegas. This is the fifth largest school district in the country. They did a really great job of first distributing laptops to their seniors, because those are the students that it's most mission critical. And then they got another 40,000 laptops that they were able to distribute to all of the students who needed it. And they had partnerships with the local cable companies to get free internet access. One of our partners at Khan Academy, Comcast, is offering free internet access to students through the crisis. So the good thing is a lot of actors, I believe, are doing the right thing. My hope is that this doesn't just happen through this crisis, that the crisis is the catalyst that makes everyone think very seriously about it. But then as we exit the crisis, people realize that it's not just a nice to have for students to have internet access, or anyone to have internet access. It really is approaching like a modern human right, like clean drinking water or shelter. And if you get that part solved, then I think EdTech goes into, okay, how do we make sure that students can stay engaged? How do we connect what happens in EdTech or online and make sure that it works and it's integrated and it's cohesive with what can happen in a physical environment, in a physical classroom? I don't view these things in tension with each other. I think online should be able to seamlessly integrate in the physical classroom, but in times like of crisis, you can then lean, like we're going through right now, you could lean more heavily on the online. I think there's interesting questions like we just had about how can things like assessment occur, credentialing occur online, especially when maybe there's a larger fear of cheating. How do you connect online experiences and mastery achieved online to real opportunities? So I think all of these are interesting frontiers. I'm also fascinated, we had that earlier question about apps to create. I'm fascinated by this idea of leveraging online. A lot of Khan Academy right now you could view as asynchronous, which means everyone's learning at their own time and pace. But one of the dreams for Khan Academy, and I wrote this in One World Schoolhouse, is are there ways to connect people who are willing to tutor or willing to teach a subject and people who need that support? It's great that we have videos. It's great that we have as much practice and feedback as you need. It's great that you have hints and get the solution of any problem. But we know that you still might be stuck, or you still might need a kind of a pick-me-up or get a little bit motivated. And it's nothing like an amazing teacher or a tutor or just someone who cares to help you out in that moment. So I would love to leverage, I'm always fascinated about how to leverage technology to actually create more richness of human interactions. So let's see, from Facebook, Kevin Rodriguez asks, hey Sal, are there any plans of adding topics about environmental education, renewables and climate change or sustainable development on Khan Academy? Many of us in the youth climate movement would be delighted to help out with that. Kevin, it's a great question, and it's a topic that we've talked about a lot here at Khan Academy. You know, one of the interesting challenges is there's topics that are very current and very relevant, but if we create an amazing course on that, and we would try. If you don't connect it, and this goes to the previous answer, if you don't connect it somehow to what's going on through students' academics, their schools, credentials, etc., it might not be used by everyone. And so what we're trying to figure out is, are there places, say in science, middle school science, for example, where these really important ideas about environmental science could find a home, and people can understand the world through that lens of critical thinking, through the lens of science, I think could be really interesting. So we have been soliciting from potential philanthropists if folks wanted to fund that type of content, middle school level, high school level science. Amgen has been actually a great partner of ours, sponsoring content at the high school and early college level science, things like biology and physics. But we're looking for partners who can help sponsor some of that content at that middle school or even elementary school level as well, which I think could touch on a lot of what you just talked about. So let's see. From Facebook, Stacy Rosenbaum asking a similar question. I'd like to see more science and social studies on the elementary end of the spectrum. We would too, Stacy. So the simple answer is we're always looking for funding for folks who might be interested in sponsoring those types of courses. So let us know, forward any folks. And sometimes we dig into reserves to try to build out these courses regardless and hope that someone will fund it. But these are definitely the types of courses that we do want to add on Khan Academy. So let's see, other questions here. I have a question from Laura Verdina on YouTube. You helped me not only pass, but do a great job on my college physics courses. Oh, that's good to hear, Laura. How did you learn to explain concepts so well? Well, thank you that you found it useful. What I think, and I don't know for sure, if folks are resonating with content that I or other team members have created, I try to think out loud when I do videos. And I think that and I try to be very transparent with my thoughts. I mean, even in this Ask Me Anything forum, as hopefully you can tell, I'm being very transparent with my thoughts. I'm not being Machiavellian, trying to say, well, what do people want me to say? And what is going to be the most polished professional thing? I'm like, okay, Sal, yeah, that's probably the truth. Just share it with folks. And I try to do the same thing when I'm teaching on Khan Academy. I think a lot of times, if you look at a textbook or even sometimes in a lecture, it all seems scripted and very perfect, but it's not exactly how people think. And oftentimes it'll skip steps. It doesn't connect it to what you might already know. And when I try to do something on Khan Academy, my brain, while I'm doing the video, is trying to do all of those things. And some of those insights are things that my brain is just surfacing in real time. I didn't plan on it. Just saying, hey, well, this is interesting that entropy in the computer science information theory version is actually mathematically identical to entropy in the chemistry, kinetic theory ideas. What is it saying about information? Just trying to draw these connections that just might happen in your mind. And I think hopefully when people listen to that, they're like, oh, this person is actually here with me, even though it is asynchronous. We're not actually at the same time with each other, but you're like, oh, I can kind of get into the mind. And I've seen some folks who are making lessons, they want it to be so perfect, they script it out, they skip the steps, and they sound very professional. They'll say, the next step in this process is when the mitochondria, but that's not how we talk in real life. And when you hear that kind of I say GPS device type talk, our human brains don't feel so connected to it. So I don't know. We don't know if there is a secret sauce to Khan Academy, but that's some of our intuitions, is that we try to keep it intuitive. We try to keep it very informal. When I make content, I don't view it as, I'm someone who knows knowledge and you are someone who does not know knowledge. I view it as like, hey, we're both people and we are both equals and we have to respect each other. And I might right now just have a few insights that you don't have yet. And so I think whether you're talking to a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old, to treat people with that kind of conversational, don't talk down to them and also don't talk above them, I think also might help, and it de-stresses the interaction. Anyway, I don't know. Well, we do try to glean some of this, because obviously as we grow and scale and add more content, we do want to get better at some of these dimensions for our content. So it looks like we're all out of time. This is actually, I'm going to answer one more question because I just saw this. It seems really interesting. Sixtus 106. And Sixtus, you've asked several questions which were very, very good. Thank you. What do you think we will say when you look back at this time? And I think that's a great question to kind of finish today's session, today's live stream on. The time we live in, and we don't know how it's going to play out over the next few months, is for sure going to be one of those times that happens every few decades that people are going to be referring to for decades to come. We are all going to be telling our children and other people's children and our children's children about this time. And our children who are alive today are going to tell their children about it. And they're going to talk about how it changed society. You can go back to some things like World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, which is, it's kind of over a longer period of time, the Vietnam War, things like this. People all have memories of that and how it changed society in certain ways. 9/11, and I'm speaking from a very kind of American-centric point of view, but you can imagine in other countries, there were traumas that their countries went through that had lasting implications, many of them negative, many of the lasting implications might have been positive. It might have somehow, put systems in place so that these things might not happen again. So I think that will be a lasting consequence. In terms of what are those changes, I've talked about this in another live stream. I think it's making all of us appreciate the things that really matter more. We all get caught up in the rat race of like, oh, I need to get into this college and get that grade and get this job, and then I need this title and I need that office and I need that type of car, and I could use a little bit more square footage in my house, and then people will think that I've really succeeded and I could dress a little better. And whether we admit it or not, all of us to some degree get a little bit caught up in that. Some of us a lot, to a large degree, get caught up in that. And I think when everything just comes down to your health, how do you protect your family, how do you protect society, that there's people who've lost their jobs, they don't know how they're going to buy food next week. I think it's sobering, and it can be sobering in a healthy way. It makes you realize that that's what's important. The connections with family and friends, your health, that's what's important. There's no reason to stress yourself out and give yourself a heart attack over getting a corner office or getting into a certain school when that thing matters way less than your heart health. So if there's a silver lining that comes out of this, it regrounds all of us on what really matters in life: staying connected and learning and appreciating what it means to be alive and be a human being. So with that, I'll let everyone go. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have a great guest from the College Board to talk about the SAT, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and future days.